Hello everyone, this is the Spider Fanboy here, here to bring you, I believe we are on part 4 of What if Ichigo Trained Early. So last we left off, we just finished the Cold War, the Winter War, whatever it was called. Aizen was sealed away and everything was basically nice and all taken care of. Ichigo had unlocked his true Shikai, which he released instead of having to rely on Mugetsu. So he hasn't lost his powers. He has been going into some training with everyone, specifically with Uryu to develop Volstandig, which he learned from Old Man Zangetsu while training in the Dangai. He's going to be training with Chad to help him develop the hollow nature of his Fullbring, and may even seek to further evolve his own Fullbring now that he's seen what Chad has been able to do. Orihime and Tatsuki were given Asauchi of their own, and over these next 18 months are going to be developing their own Sanpakuto, which are going to be based off of their Fullbring. And Yuzu and Karin would have practically fully developed their own Fullbring and are going to be developing their Sanpakuto right next to their older sister models in Orihime and Tatsuki. So for the next 18 months leading up to the Quincy War, I'm going to go ahead and just cover what kind of abilities they've developed. Like I said, Ichigo helped Ishida develop. Sorry, I'm gonna pause for a second. Okay, just my little brother needed something there. Um, yeah, he's going to help Uryu develop his own Volstandig. Maybe he helps Ryuken. Maybe Ryuken gets in on the action. Maybe he doesn't. It all depends, really. Um, they end up working on it, and Ichigo actually develops. He's working on his Shikai in his Shikai state. He has one of two states he can enter that can give him a power boost outside of having to rely on his monstrously powerful Bankai. He can enter the form that he had in canon, the Horn of Salvation. It's a form of holification or partial holification, where he unbalances his powers and allows his hollow side to take control, or not so much take control, but to bolster his hollow powers specifically. Turns his larger blade white, and it's what he mainly and he's able to use it as a secondary horn in order to charge Ceros, Grand Ray Ceros, and all the like. But he's also developed a way to go into the opposite direction, where he only forms one Quincy wing from his Volstandig. It's a partial Volstandig, similar to Olet Stilts, but it doesn't. Similar in power to Olet Stilts, but it doesn't completely sacrifice his abilities. Um, and instead of having the marking and the horn, he instead just gets a wing popping out from like his right shoulder blade. It's black and blue for the sake of the Quincy powers, and we'll say it advances his Quincy ability so that he has blood vein and blood artery at the same time. Now, I know that you're not Quincy's aren't able to do that, but Ichigo is hacks and his powers defy all logic. So we'll just go on ahead and say that it allows him to keep both up at the same time, and maybe they're channeled through his blade. And he can also change his Quincy blade into a bow whenever he needs to. He typically keeps it in a blade, but he can change it. He can shift it into a Quincy bow. As for Uryu, you can just come up with it'll be like his let stilts, but he has the wings on both sides, and that'll basically be his Volstandig. It's a very simple one, but we don't need it to be overly flashy for our boy. We're just giving him a power up. Doesn't need to be overly flashy. We can see that he works a little bit more on his true holification now that he has access to his complete Sanpakuto. He needs to get reacquainted with how deep his powers run. And maybe he even decides to go back to his Fullbring. He develops it past what he initially had, where he just had two blades, the two blades that I gave him on the thumbnail, and his normal Fullbring armor. And if you've seen Bleach Brave Souls, if you played the game, there's a Mugetsu Fullbring. That's basically what his Fullbring is going to be like. And I described that Chad would basically kind of get like a partial holification almost by evolving his Fullbring. And these final forms of their Fullbring are going to be like Bankai. They have to activate it. So normally they're in their initial final stage Fullbring. Ichigo looks like he normally does, but with two blades, the two blades from the thumbnail, and Chad looks like he does at the end of during the Thousand Year Blood War. He's completely developed his abilities, but when they transform into these forms, like I said, Ichigo goes into his Mugetsu full ring, where he has that blade, that singular blade, and he can create multiples of it, kind of like he did in his false Shikai that I mentioned before. He can develop multiples of the blades, so he can make two of them, press their ends together, and give himself a Quincy bow that he can like fire his arrows from. And like his strongest attack is he charges a full power Quincy arrow, and he lets the tip prick his finger so that he's able to form a grand race arrow at the end of it. And as soon as he lets go and he fires the two of them, he uncrosses his blades and fires out it Getsuga Jujisho. And as for Chad, like I mentioned before, if you search up Hollow Chad, it should be one of the first things that you end up seeing, a Chad hollow form. It's where it creeps over his face and his chest, and it gives him like this half mask that's split down the middle. And it has horns that curve downwards. He has a rib cage on his left side and more of what looks like tribalized armor on the right. And yeah, he basically ends up looking like a literal demon. But in pursuit of gaining more power, Chad decides to go in the direction that nobody else has. Um, Uryu is obviously a Quincy and has developed his full standig. Um, and Orihime and Tatsuki have been developing their full ring to develop into Shinigami abilities, into their Zanpakuto, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But since Chad has been going off in the deep end in regards to hollow powers, he decides to attempt to become an Arankar with Ichigo's help. So he asks him to allow him to fully holofy, similar to what Ichigo did when he was training for Shinigami powers. He lets himself fully holofy, and due to how powerful he's become, he's at least Enerhuchas, if not near the level of a Vastalord. And with Ichigo's help, it takes some time in Hueco Mundo, so maybe they do this over the summer break that they end up having, because it's 18 months, so they end up skipping 2 school years. So maybe they do this during one of the summer breaks that they end up going on, and he's able to manage the transformation into an Arankar. And that's basically going to be he's able to jump back into his human body and still use his full bring the same way Ichigo is. And he basically is like a substitute Arankar you can think of. He's able to unlock his Resurrection, which is pretty easy for them. It's practically instinctive. They don't really need to do much training to unlock it. But when he does, we'll just say like it's awakened. How would you say? I want to say primordial, because like his whole thing is around the demon and the giant for his arms. So primordial in Spanish. Primordial. It'll be the same. So we'll just say his phrase is like awakened primordial, and you know he ends up going into a full blown holification. So it looks similar to what I just described for his final transformation of Fullbring, but it completely envelops his body. His hair grows out, and it completely goes down to his legs, and he's like completely split down. He's completely split in half. His left is the white and red, and his right side is the black and pink. And for his shield, like that face that's drawn on it, the skull, it's like able to come to life when he's in battle, and it can like eat hollow. It can eat other reishi based attacks. So if someone launches a Sero or a Quincy arrow, he's able to completely consume it and turn it into energy for him to use his attacks. And maybe for his left, his La Muerte grows in power, so that if he even so much as touches you with the hand, if he acknowledges you as an enemy, he can begin to like eat away at your spiritual energy and like erode you. Similar to Barragan's power, it kind of like begins to age you. It like permanently reduces how much Ryatsu you have. Like you don't. It's not like it drains some of your energy and you can regain it. It's very deadly. And that'll basically be his resurrection. I'm not gonna give him segunda etapa, but like in order to train these abilities, Ichigo and Chad end up going to they go to Hueco Mundo, so they're gonna be more in contact with the Hollows. Holly has still taken over as Queen of Hueco Mundo with Grimjow and Nell as her left and right hands. And like I mentioned before, Nell has been properly restored, so no need to go back into her child state anymore. Maybe she can if she wants to, but she doesn't need to. And in training with Ichigo so often, let me see if there's any Tier Haribel Segunda Etapa. Let me see if there's any fan over there, because like they're all gonna be getting Segunda Etapas. Yeah, she did end up getting one. It seems like for the Brave Souls. Oh, that looks goddamn. What is Taite Kubo thinking coming up with all this? But yeah, just search up Tier Halibel, Grim Jiao, and Neliel Segunda Etapa, and you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll be able to find it pretty easily. But they end up developing their own Segunda Etapas thanks to training so much with Ichigo and his hollow powers, as well as perhaps he even brings along um, Karin and Yuzu to develop their hollow powers and their full ring. They're not really going to be evolving their full ring past what they're already at. But when they develop their Zanbakuto, they're going to have to decide what kind of power sets they're going to be going with. So Yuzu herself is still going to be sticking to her Shinigami powers and Quincy powers. And she's mainly going to be Kido based with her using her Zanbakuto. When she unlocks her Shikai, it's basically her full ring. It's like Force Edge. It's going to have Force Edge that Virgil has in DMC5. It's a spectral blade that's in the form of a long sword, and she's able to summon a whole bunch of summoned blades to assist her in battle. So she can use them both like Dante and Virgil can. She can have them like Swordmaster, where she has like a whole bunch of spectral blades that follow her attacks and develop their own combos in order to beat up her enemies. Or she can have them shoot out in a variety of different ways, pin her enemies, and all that kind of stuff. And for Karin, hers is going to be that she's going to have a set of gauntleting greaves. Or should I have that? No, she's gonna have dual blades. And what's gonna happen is that near the hilt there's gonna be like a circle for them. So they're two normal straight blades with a simple hilt, with bandages wrapped around them. It's kind of like Zangetsu will have that a little bit. And they're gonna have like these empty holes where around the hilt area. Um, and in between them, as she's attacking, as she's fighting normally just with her dual blades. But as she's fighting, energy will begin to build up within them, and she's able to release them as charged shots. So she doesn't have to kick around the energy anymore. She can just have they're constantly building up passively, and the more active she is in battle, the more she's moving, the more she's attacking with physical attacks, the more they build up, and she can release them in charged up Ceros that are shot out from like the end of the blades, or she can release them as charged up, like instant charged up, fully powered Getsuga Tenshos, and it doesn't drain her. It's a passive ability, so it's constantly pulling in Reishi, so like a little bit of that Quincy element in there as well. It's constantly pulling in Reishi from her surroundings in order to power up her attack, and that'll basically be their Shikais. Karn is leaning more towards holification. She's developed her own mask. You can think of whatever you want for the mask. You can search something up, you can develop something on your own, completely fine. But she's going to be developing her own mask and training with the visors in Ichigo in it. Whereas, whereas Yuzu is looking to develop her own Volstandig. And she starts off by developing her own partial Volstandig that she's learning from Ichigo, that he uses in his Shikai. She's learning how to do that. And they're also doing some Bankai training. But it's all pretty leisurely, pretty casual. They're not they're not in the midst of a war anymore, but they also know that anything can happen, and well, they don't think there's a war. Their girls are going to be kept out of it. But as Ichigo and Uryu are researching the Volstandic, they in Soken's book, the grandpa's notebook, they end up learning about the story of Yuhabak, however you say his name. They learn about the Quincy King, and they learn about that little legend, and they learn about that he was the reason that their mothers died. He was the true reason. And they're gearing up. They're training the girls so that they're ready. They let their friends know, and maybe they share their suspicions with Soul Society so that they're going to be training with them. They're not aware of what exactly their plans are. They're not aware of the fact that they're spying on them, but they do think it might be possible. They've dealt with Aizen, so they're not going to be taking any chances. And they all get to training. So Ichigo's going to be also jumping into Soul Society to train again to bring Yuzu and Karin along so that they can develop their Soul Reaper abilities. Maybe learn some Keto under like Unohana or something. Maybe Yuzu and Orihime are deciding to learn healing-based Keto because they've learned Barrier Keto and other Keto spells from like Tessai and Hachi. But now they're going to be learning specifically under Unohana and healing-based Keto. Ichigo is going to be having spars with Zaraki in the Muken or whatever it's called. That dimension where he fought with Unohana. He's going to be having regular spars with Kenpachi, which eventually leads him to undoing the seal on his powers completely, and he ends up achieving Shikai. I don't know if he'd achieve Bankai just yet, because they don't want to completely destabilize the dimension of the Muken and completely tear apart the Soul Society. But he does get to Shikai, and this ends up putting them around even-ish. Ichigo still has access to more abilities than Kenpachi, but Kenpachi, being the wild monster that he is able to keep up. And they have regular spars down there, so no need to kill Unohana to awaken Kenpachi. We'll say that Ikaku is also sparring, training up his Bankai. Gets Yumachika to develop his own. I don't really know if he ever developed one, but yeah, that's gonna be cool. Toshiro definitely wants to help with Yuzu and Karin's training. So he helps them in their training since, they're Ishin's daughters. And maybe he's able to rope in Rangiku to help as well. Maybe pushes her, he's like, Renji already has Bankai. If you really want to stay as my lieutenant, unless one of these two end up deciding to move into Soul Society and replace you, maybe I can train them to be the next captain after me instead of you. And like he lights a little bit of a fire. Rangiku decides she can step up, so she gets a little bit more serious in her training. And Tatsuki and Orihime are also here training. Tatsuki is regularly training with Soifan and Yoruichi, who I'm gonna give her her Zanpakuto, and it's gonna be that werecat form she has. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the Thousand Year Blood War, spoilers, she has like this lightning cat mode, lightning hellcat or something like that. But like she doesn't like it because she can't control it. It causes her to revert to only instincts. She's running purely on instinct. So here she's gonna have her Zanpakuto, and it's gonna help her focus that. In her Shikai, it's basically gonna be what Tatsuki is gonna have. Um, they get like these gauntlets and greaves. It's specifically Tatsuki gets these gauntlets and greaves that are basically Balrog from Devil May Cry 5. They heat up the more she's moving in battle, the more momentum she has, and her Bankai just kind of turns her into like a living phoenix. She grows like these wings that sprout from her back. The flames completely coat her body, and similarly, Yoruichi's gonna have these. She's gonna have like they're gonna look similar to those weapons that she had when she was fighting against Aizen, the anti-hero weapons that she had. They're gonna look a little similar to that, but maybe more in the style of like a white tiger. A little bit of a reference there. We already have the little stinging bee in Soifang. We have the vermilion bird in Tatsuki, so she's gonna be like a white tiger kind of design in her Shikai, and then her Bankai is gonna be her werecat form, the lightning cat form that she has, but she's gonna be able to control it more. Maybe she trains with Ichigo and all his hollow buddies to better learn how to control and guide her instincts. But yeah, that's basically going to be what they're going to be learning. Orihime is going to develop. Um, I think there was a Masamune in canon, but it was like in that filler arc. It was a weird Zanpakuto where like they all. Hold on, Masamune Bleach is that a thing? Okay, there was a Masamune, and yeah, who was the Shinigami, and a Muramasa, who was his Zanpakuto, and he separated all the Zanpakuto spirits from everyone. It was so weird. I don't know why, but she's gonna have her Zanpakuto basically be Muramasa, but I'm gonna change it. I don't know what its abilities properly was, but It's going to be based off of her reality warping powers. So she's still going to be able to channel her full bring. Maybe it's that the hilt of her sword is in the shape of her flower petal pendant, and she's still able to call her spirits, but they're more powerful, they're larger, they're able to do more. And in her Shikai, she can basically use them like she normally did, but her Bankai is going to be the sword that she initially had. She's not going to have access to the sword unless she can form it as like a secondary sword. But here, so she can like dual wield and stuff. But here, her Bankai is going to be, she channels all of them so that she channels all her reality warping powers through her blade. So her Bankai is going to be super OP, but it's super taxing. She's not going to be able to like make it last long, and she's not the best swordswoman. She's going to be improving. She's going to be training that, but she hasn't been training in specifically swordsmanship as much as everybody else has. Um, so her blade is going to be able to cut. If she wants to cut through her enemy, her blade will cut through it. If she wants to mend her enemies, her allies' wounds, her blade will do so. If she wants to protect someone, her blade will not allow anything to come past it. She'll be able to channel her Keto, but like if she channels a barrier-based Keto through it, it'll create like a widespread barrier that nothing will be able to penetrate, so long as she has the reishi to supply it. And it'll cut down like on how much reishi she needs to supply it, but it's also in concentration and her will. So if her enemy's will is greater than hers, they'll be able to pierce through the barrier. Like if their killing intent is greater than her intent to protect her friends, her will to protect her friends, it'll break, or it'll be weakened enough that it can break. If she like channels a healing keto and like pierces one of her friends, they'll be completely healed and they won't even be harmed by the blade. It'll like pass through them like a ghost. So like if she like needs to cut through a friend of hers, an ally, in order to get to an enemy, she'll be able to completely bypass her friend, maybe even channel healing keto so that it actually heals them, and then land a decisive killing blow against an enemy. She's able to manipulate reality with her blade, and it's super OP. Everyone acknowledges it. But again, it's about her will. If her enemy's will is greater than hers, then she's not going to be able to make it count. But yeah, that's going to be her blade. Uh, I'll get into the okay. Ichigo, like I said, he's develops his partial holification and his partial Volstandic, and when he goes into Bankai, he's able to completely go into his Segunda Etapa. So he develops two horns, he develops the full hollow markings across his body, but he's also able to pull out a complete Volstandic, two wings, and blood vein and blood artery is complete. The markings are completely covering the entirety of his body. So he's constantly upped in strength, constantly upped in defense. And the only thing that he really needs to worry about is his output. Oh, and yeah, he combines his blades. And he's able to completely change how it looks if he wants to. He can have it in that giant form, or like I mentioned before, he can have it in the same katana form as holified Tensa Zangetsu. So if you search up, like I said before, if you want, just go on ahead, search up holified Tensa Zangetsu, and that's what he can shift it into. He can shift it in between his true Bankai and his holified Tensa Zangetsu blade. It'll have two forms that he can use however he wants. His Volstandig, he's able to shoot out feathers that are actually in the shape of his true Bankai, or he can have them look like whatever blade he's already wielded. His false Bankai is full bring false Bankai. His false Shikai is full bring false Shikai. You can have him look like his two full bring blades. You can have him look like whatever he wants, so long as he's familiar enough with it. And he is super stupid OP. He's able to make full use of all of his abilities from all of his heritage. Um, he's able to pull off a whole bunch of attacks, and if he wants to, he can summon his Zanbakuto spirits to help him in battle. Maybe they can pull out some of their own blades and help him in battle. He basically turns into a god-awful fan-made OC monster that is able to destroy everything in his path. And Yuzu and Karin's Bankai. Well, To clarify, Yuzu and Karin at this point, by the end of the 18 months, they'll be about as powerful as Ichigo was in canon at this point, at the beginning of the Blood Year of the Blood War. But that's only because they've had to explore more avenues of power. They've had to they've had to develop their Quincy abilities, their Shinigami abilities in Kido, in Hakuda, swordsmanship, Zanjutsu, I think it's what it's called, Zanjutsu. They've had to develop some level of, they have had to develop their full bring to power up their normal abilities. They've had to develop their hollow abilities. Yuzu has gotten to the point where she can call upon her mask, but she doesn't go full blown into hollowification. She's trying to work on her Volstandic, and her Bankai is gonna be that she summons that she summons like a spectral copy of herself. If you've seen Virgil's version of Doppelganger, how he'll summon like a spectral version of like his Sin Devil Trigger, she'll summon like a spectral version of her. She'll basically summon her own hollified Zanbakuto spirit, and it is hollified because she's merged it with her full bring and her hollow abilities. So yeah, she'll summon that in like her own mini Yuha Bak, since she leans more towards her Quincy side. Maybe it'll be like a hollified Tensa Zangetsu. Maybe she'll have that because Ichigo typically only has Old Man Zangetsu and White to help him out, and White Zangetsu. She'll have like that hollified Tensa Zangetsu that Ichigo faced when he was doing his Dangai training. That'll basically be what her spirit looks like all the time because she's more closely melded all of her abilities. Instead of having them separate and letting them grow, she keeps them more contained. Um, Karin's will be, her blade will, she'll put them together and she'll have like a double staffed blade, but she'll also have a halo kind of ring around her that's like behind her, kind of like what Zamasu has, what Fused Zamasu from Dragon Ball Super has. She has like a halo ring around her, and like it has it's 5 points like a Quincy cross. So her Bankai actually takes some Quincy elements, whereas Yuzu is able to call upon her mask, and Karin will have that ring, oh, behind her, and similarly to her blades, she can build up. They'll build up over time, but they'll build up to be even stronger. So it takes them longer to charge. They don't have to be fully charged for her to release them, but if she wants them at full power, she'll have to wait. And like maybe from one of them, she can form them into like a whole bunch of Quincy arrows, or is like just one large Quincy arrow shot at once. From like her right, it'll be like a fully charged Zero Blast. From her left, yeah, she can like have them switch between firing arrows or or firing arrows or firing Ceros. Up to her though. And Chad has definitely developed the ability to use Ceros, obviously, since he's a full-blown Arankar. He can even in his hollowified full bring, he can channel and use Ceros. And when he is in Espada mode, he is in his Arankar mode, he is even more powerful than ever. Um, so yeah, I think that should be it in regards to how powerful they've all gotten. Um, oh yeah, Karin also has her own mask. Um, she just developed it later, and maybe since Karin developed her mask first, Yuzu is now learning to use the mask, and she's trying to develop her own Volstandic. So she's trying to gain a partial wing similar to what she's trying to develop her own partial Volstandic. So she's trying to develop that partial wing. Um, they're not as powerful as Ichigo is right now, or even was before, but they're as powerful as Canon Ichigo is in his full bring Bankai. Um, when they go all out in their Bankai with hollowification, with their hollow mask, or their preferred. So when Karn is in Bankai with her hollow mask, and is in her Bankai with her Volstandic wing, they're about a similar level of power as Canon Bankai Ichigo at this point. And when they fully learn to master their powers, they'll get even more powerful. Uh, Tatsuki basically turns into like a living phoenix. Orihime has reality warping powers even more powerful than ever before. And Chad is a full blown Chad. He is a mega Chad, a mega hollow Chad, a mega Rankar. And yeah, he is ready to completely punch someone in the face. Suraki is already has already achieved his Shikai. Maybe training with Yuzu Karin and possibly occasionally Ichigo and Ishin has helped Toshiro to develop his Bankai more. Maybe he's like more on the verge of it. He has it figured out and he can whip it out in a battle if he needs to. That mature state that he has, so that he can make full use of his Bankai. And he's also still been keeping up his training with Rukia. Rukia has also joined the girls and all of them in training. And seeing how Tatsuki and Orihime were so close to developing their Bankai, like let's say like 12 months in, she ended up achieving her Bankai early. And she's more aware of the risks of using it. So she's going to be a little ready by the time everyone comes around. Everyone is getting ready. Um, Unohana is maybe deciding to get into the battle scene once again now that her and Yamamoto specifically are aware of the fact that Yu Habak may be coming back very soon, within like the next year and a half or so. They've been training themselves. Maybe they decided to. Unohana has made a sparring partner consistently out of Kenpachi, and whenever Ichigo is there to visit, for like a couple days at a time, usually on weekends or like whenever they have break, he try Yamamoto usually gets one spar out of Ichigo so that he can get into shape. It's usually in Shikai, but let's say every few months, instead of Zaraki going in there into the Muken with Ichigo, it's Yamamoto and Ichigo going in there. So yeah, old man Yamamoto is getting back in shape, and it is going to be everyone's problem. Um, Renji himself has also been training. He wants to not be sidelined, so maybe he's training with Chad. Maybe he goes to Hueco to train with Chad every now and again, and the rest of the Arankar. And because of this, he ends up developing his true Bankai early. Everyone is getting to realize their full power. They're not waiting. They're not going to let themselves be sitting ducks like they were with Aizen. They're getting ready like they did before throughout the Winter War. So, and Soifan is going to develop her own Shumpo, like I mentioned. It's air based instead of lightning based, like Yoruichi's. And Tatsuki's own version of the Shumpo is fire based. So yeah, Soifan is going to be moving at like she's going to be creating sonic booms just with moving without flash step. And with flash step, all you're going to feel is a gust of wind before you're pierced twice by her Suzumibachi or whatever it's called. And yeah, and since everyone is more in touch they're more in contact with everyone in Huecomundo. When the Shinigami R&D end up learning about all the hollows that are disappearing, Holly is actually quick to get into contact with everyone. And I don't know who these two are. Yunosuke, Yuki, and Shino prepare for their new mission of protecting Karakuri-chan. There's no need for that. We have plenty of more capable people here. And when so, we'll say that the hollows are able of protecting themselves, so they're not going to be completely taken out like they were in canon. Especially with the top three having their own segunda etapas in Halibel, Nell, and Grimshaw. They do lose some of their. They do still lose a lot of their basic fodder hollows. Um, but they don't lose their big three. Holybell isn't like taken hostage and like brutally beaten before being killed. They're able to keep their fractions relatively safe. Maybe maybe like they lose like one or two members of each of their fractions, but altogether they're able to keep everyone safe. And but they do end up being cut off from Soul Society. The Quincy's are able to use that shadow world thing, and they're able to cut everyone off. They're able to cut off the communications. Ichigo has this fight with that Ascuero Ascuaro Ebern, whatever his name is. That guy he ended up fighting that tried to trap him. he deals with them pretty easily, and by now they've realized that the Quincy's are beginning their invasion. So they're quick to like develop a response team to head out to Soul Society and to head out um, to Hueco Mundo. So we'll say that maybe the remaining Vizards and Chad decide to go to Hueco Mundo to go check out what's happening, whereas Ichigo will be taking everyone else, or he'll be taking the girls with him, Orihime, Tatsuki, Yuzu, and Karin. Or no, he'll have Yuzu and Karin stay here, hold down the fort with his father, Uryu, and Ryuken. Whereas he, Tatsuki, and Orihime are gonna head to Soul Society to check out what's wrong. Um, Ikaku and Yumachika, they don't. They've already, Soul Society has already been aware of the Rukongai disappearances, because like I said before, Ishin kind of talked to Byakuya about checking up on the Rukongai with the Shiba clan. So they're made aware and they go kind of into lockdown, and like everyone is getting ready to face off against the Quincy's. And Yamamoto ends up confronting that group of Quincy, and Sasakibe does still sadly get folded. Maybe he has been training, but it's just not enough. He still gets folded, and he ends up revealing that same information. Ichigo, they don't they don't have to learn about that change in authority. Like I said, Ichigo is already heading to Soul Society. It's Chad and the Vizards. They arrive in Hueco Mundo. They find out what's been happening, and Chad ends up leading the charge with the remaining Vizards. And they allow themselves to fully holify. They've mastered their holification and can use their Bankai freely, so they're able to assist the remaining uh, Tier. They're able to help Hollybell, Nell, and Grimshaw in their fractions push back the invading Quincy's. And we'll say that Chad is the one to face off against Quilly. The one that writes, yeah. And if they're worried about being trapped in those traps where only Quincy's can be can only Quincy's can escape, maybe Kisuke and in preparation of fighting against Quincy's, they've developed some anti-Quincy techniques or technology, like Kisuke Mayori and Hayori have been developing some things with the help of the Fullbringers and all that, so that they can infect the Quincy Reishi based traps with hollow Reishi in order to kind of erode them, so that they don't have to worry about being trapped or anything. Ichigo and his friends that he has, Tatsuki and Orihime. They're confronted in the Garganta and are or in in the Dongai and are trapped. They kind of anticipated that they may split up, so they're trapped. But Ichigo is quick to break out, and he takes out whoever it was that tried to trap him. Byakuya might get still defeated by Asnot, because they don't know about the Bankai ceiling, so that might be enough to catch him off guard. But he's also going to be receiving reinforcements in the form of Kenpachi, who only needs his Shikai to really make quick work of everyone. Or he doesn't really need his Shikai at first, and when he does jump in, he sees what happens to Byakuya. He just goes straight to Shikai instead of Bankai, and takes that guy out. He's able to cleave through all of the Senpan Sakura petals with like a massive explosion of his own Rishi, and is able to take him out. And I don't know if that would be enough to give them back the Bankai, but maybe he's able to break the medallion. Like he stomps on it, or he pierces it with his Shikai, and it releases his Bankai back to him. Yamamoto here doesn't fall against Yuha. He is a little bit caught off guard, but he's definitely more in shape, so he doesn't have to release his Bankai after that fight against the fake Yuha. And at this point, Ichigo ends up arriving, and they end up having a three-way battle. It's Yamamoto, Yuha and Zaraki, who has now arrived to the battlefield as well. They all fight against Yuha, but he is still forced to retreat. But they also know not to use Bankai. Maybe Kenpachi informed them about it. And Yamamoto, maybe he didn't get his sealed, maybe it did. But even if it did, when Ichigo arrives, maybe he's fast enough to destroy the medallion, even if Yuhabak does see it coming. He doesn't allow it, or maybe Orihime is able to sneak in. Since she has her own reality warping powers, so long as she wills it, she will cut through the medallion. So maybe she's able to send her piercing spirit to go straight through the medallion and destroy it. Either way, Yamamoto and everyone learns about the bankais being able to be sealed, which sadly happened to Toshiro, but his too was able to be released. Orihime and Tatsuki ended up splitting up from Ichigo when they first arrived, so the captains are all saved. So we don't have to worry about any serious casualties. And eventually the Royal Guard does come in late, as always. They're practically useless. No one knows why they're here. But yeah, they come in. They end up coming in, and they decide that they're gonna be taking Ichigo and his sisters, and they're gonna be taking who they did in canon. I think it was Renji, Ichigo, Rukia, and also who else? Maybe Zuraki, but they kind of see that he can develop well enough on his own. He's unlocked his Bankai, and they can see that he's probably going to be able to develop well enough on his own, and he may accidentally just destroy the Soul King's palace with how powerful he is, so they're not going to take that risk. But they also take in Yuzu and Karin, so that they can be trained up and properly used for the battle. Ichigo kind of tries to protest, but he also realizes he'd rather have them as powerful as possible than risk losing them because he tried to hide them away. Um, we'll say that Yamamoto, if he didn't lose his arm against the battle against Aizen trying to pour that Kido, because like I said, it was kind of a 50-50 or more like a 60-40, maybe 70-30 on whether or not he would use it. But if he didn't lose the arm, he definitely lost it here. He's been gravely injured, so even with Orihime ends up stepping in to help heal him, but he does decide that he wants Shunsui as the new captain commander. They need as much like he's gonna be there to help him. He's gonna be there to provide his own experience in fighting against Yuha, but he definitely wants a successor in case he falls in battle. So he's gonna have Shunsui appointed as the new captain commander, and everyone arrives at the Soul King Palace. They don't need to be healed. Orihime is already taken care of that, but they are going to be properly. They're going to be trained by the Zero Squad. Everyone here is eating instead of just Ichigo and Renji. And they meet up with Oetsu, who he actually praises Ichigo and how he's been able to get everyone to get more in touch with their bankais and their zanpakutos in general. Like how he's kind of made a proper leading example in how you're supposed to be connected to your zanpakuto. How at the end of the day, the blade is you and you are the blade. And they don't need to fight their Asauchi. Maybe in Yuzu Karandu, maybe they've had a few issues, but either way, there's no need for Kenpachi versus Unohana because Kenpachi's power has already been awakened. Instead, it's just going to be Kenpachi, Unohana, and Yamamoto training to get a little bit more in shape as well than even before. They're training to get more powerful and to help rein in Kenpachi's Bankai. Maybe Toshiro is helping as well, but he might just get in the way, so probably not. But yeah, there's no need to kill Unohana. There's no need for Ichigo and his family to go back and head to Karakura Town, or maybe using Karandu, because like I said, Ichigo has kind of been trying to keep them away from everything, so he hasn't informed them. Sorry about that. He hasn't informed them of every detail of every single little thing. He's given some half truths and omitted some details, but he initially is the one to tell them what they need to know, and they do eventually head to Ishin to confront him about it. And they eventually come back and they are able to. Yuzu is able to completely develop her her hollow mask. She's able to keep it on indefinitely, whereas and as well as awaken her second Volstandic, and Karin is able to do the same. She's able to awaken her final stage of her Volstandic, and they get to training and learning to properly handle the balancing of Volstandic and holification. And it's mainly them training with Ichigo than the Zero Squad, but they are gonna get those fancy duds that Ichigo had. They're gonna get their own smaller versions of them made for them. Um, Uryu has been talking with Ryuken, and they have better planned out Uryu's infiltration of the Wonder Egg headquarters. Um, so yeah, he's still gonna be going in as a double agent, but he's gonna be much more powerful, and they're gonna be a little wary of him because they know how close he is with Ichigo and everyone. But he is still able to infiltrate, and it's going to be much. He's going to be able to any problems he's going to have are going to be dealt with much more easily. The captains, let's say the ones who did lose their Bankai, have been training again, and maybe some of them like Soifun. She since she lost her Bankai, we'll say that yeah, Toshiro and Soifung and Byakuya still lost their Bankai. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But either way, they all do still get the training a little more on in private. Komamura finally decided to go through that with that humanification technique to become human. He goes through that. Um, Ichigo doesn't need to have that whole thing. Maybe instead it's Yuzu and Karin confronting their inner spirits, which are one spirit. They each only have one spirit instead of two. But it's obvious that they each have uses is more like I said. It looked just like the Holified Tensei Zangetsu. So like the even younger Yuha, he looks like him, but he's also looks holified. Whereas Karin is probably gonna look a little bit more unique. It's gonna look more holified, but with some elements of Yuha's influence, since she initially had stronger Hollow Reishi, whereas Yuzu had um, stronger Quincy lineage. Um, it says Rukia and Renji end up visiting Senjumaro, so we can say that their training goes about the same, except for the fact that they've already achieved their Bankai and True Bankai respectively. Byakuya does not need to wake from his coma. He was healed if he was still in a coma, but no, he was fine. Kenpachi jumped in, and he has been training this whole time instead of having to have his injuries healed. And the second invasion ends up beginning. Everyone is very much ready. We have BG9 going against Marichu. Oh, Omeda, Soifung's lieutenant. Let's say he's been training, he's been up in his training, and whatever their battle ends up being, as it goes about the same, but maybe more in Omeda's favor. Hitsugaya and Rangiku end up engaging against Basby. And his explosion isn't actually going to, if it was an issue, I would imagine it would be an issue, but it's not going to be as much of an issue for Hitsugaya here. He's been training against Tatsuki and Karin with their very explosive and flame-based Zanbakutos respectively. He's used to dealing with destructive power, so if that battle was an issue, it's not going to be here. So yeah, Soifeng has to step in the battle against BG9, but here, instead of initially gaining the upper hand, BG9 does not get to deliver that devastating blow. She completely releases the power of her Shunpo, of her wind-based Shunpo, and is able to get out of the way. She's much more used to it. It looks like she almost has something like that here, but she's able to get out of the way. She's not going to be damaged whatsoever. She's not going to be like fatally wounded, or she's not going to get that devastating blow. Kang Du is able to wound Rangiku. This is an unseen. It happened off screen. She's not going to be off screen here. She releases her Bankai, which similar to Senpon Sakura is just more of Heineko, more of that dust, and she's able to perform a protective barrier around herself, so she's not going to be wounded here. And Basby isn't able to deliver that grievous wound to Hitsugaya. He's able to just barely get out of the way, but he is going to be struggling. Rangiku was winded, and maybe she does still end up getting somewhat injured instead of like being off screen. She's injured, but it's not nearly as life threatening. But the two of them are going to be difficult. Are going to be They're going to have some issues against Kang. They end up having to team up. It's 2-on-2 now. Mayuri receives his call from Urahara, who has already set up the transportation method with the full ringers, and they're able to get to Soul. Urahara is able to get to Soul Society, and the captains are able to take their Shinyaku, which I believe is supposed to help reawaken their Bankais. So yeah, King is injured by the Holified Daigyurin Hyorinmaru. Oh, yeah, they're able to take him out. Um, Toshiro, like I said, if they even lost their Bankais, if you want to believe that they did, either way, maybe it's just enough to kickstart them and give them just enough of a boost to pull it out. Maybe they had, maybe in having to regain it after it was sealed away, it just made it difficult to call upon it. But either way, whatever issues they may have had, they're able to clear them out like they did in canon. And Rangiku herself is able to survive. She's not going to be off screen. I'm pretty sure she was off screen in canon. Shinji and Komamura confront the Bambietta. She is going to have some difficulties because Shinji can fully holify if he needs to. Although the Stern Raider end up enacting their Volstandic. It happens a little bit earlier in the battle. As soon as they reawaken, they get that little boost. They have to respond with their Volstandic. Ichigo and everyone, Ichigo and his sisters, as well as Tatsuki and Orihime, they end up departing from the Soul King Palace with their new clothing, with their badass clothes. And Momo attempts to attack Bambietta. I do not think that's going to go well. Komamura activates his Kokuju Tango Myo Dangai Joy. I'm pretty sure that's just his Bankai. Yeah, he activates it and completely overpowers Bambietta by forcing her bombs back into her body. So that battle goes about the same. Komamura ends up having to transform into a wolf. That battle is gonna go about the same. Not too much changes with him. Iba arrives and prepares to take Komamura to Cybern to confront Yuha. And the rest of the girls, the rest of those Quincy girls, end up finding Bambietta. And a lot of these fights are just going more easy for the captains. Not as easy, but easier. Hauswolf is called back to the Wander HQ, and Yuha ends up punishing BG9, who is in shambles. Maybe he's like missing a leg, instead of just having that big old tear. And Kang, who probably has like 1,000 scratches, like a death from 1,000 cuts because of Heineko being in Bankai. So they're punished for losing their battles. And Hauswolf, all that is taken care of just about the same. Mask de Masculine ambushes Ikaku, Yumichika, and Hisagi. Ikaku is going to be able to help carry this battle. He's been practicing in Bankai against his captain, who didn't even need Shikai for him. Ruki and Renji end up arriving as well. They're much more prepared, and anyone that they have to fight is going to probably be folded. Kensei and Rose confront Mask, and they are ready to pull out their holification if they have to. Kensei is able to overpower his Mask with his Bankai, but when the Superstar triggers, they end up answering with full-blown holification. Yeah, so they're not defeated. So Kensei and Rose aren't defeated. They're able to take him down instead of having to have Renji save them. Or if they're not able to take him down, they're able to hold their own and not be folded. Renji arrives, takes care of him with ease, as does Rukia, if she even needs to step in. Rukia does remove them from the battlefield if they are injured. They're still hollows fighting against Quincy's. So they're pretty injured and they have to be taken away from the battlefield. Renji overpowers him and takes him out before he can use his Quincy Volstandic. I'm gonna say Renji is able to take him out since he's been injured more by the two hollowified captains. He's able to take him out using his Shikai and preventing him from using his Volstandic. So we're not gonna have to see Renji unleash his true Bankai just yet. He doesn't have to. He just takes him out using Maybe he infuses some keto through his shikai. Haschwalth explains the ability to, in make people stern ritters to Uryu, his soul sharing ability, and how everyone is tied to him. Uh, Rukia has her battle with Ice, whatever his name is, and we'll say that she ends up using her ability. The battle goes about the same, but hmm, yeah, she's able to instead of being shooken by the fear, she's able to activate her Bankai on her own instead of needing some like encouragement from Byakuya. So she's able to take him out and completely shatter him without having to rely on Byakuya coming in to save her ass and give her like some words of encouragement. Gunai Lee confronts Yachiru and Isane, who is healing Rosen Kensei. Yachiru is able to be manifested, so she's still able to be here, but we'll say that since she is like more in touch with Kenpachi, the two of them, their bond is stronger than ever since he's awakened his Shikai and Bankai so much earlier. She's actually able to call upon some power in order to hold this guy off. So yeah, their battle ends up going about the same, but he is, yeah. I always thought it was crazy how she had her own Shikai. Her and Kenpachi were powerful enough that his Sanpakuto spirit was able to develop a Sanpakuto. She releases her own Bankai, which we'll just say she's able to completely multiply those spirits of hers that she ends up creating, and her maybe she's able to summon her own Bankai Kenpachi to fight for her instead of those two, and is able to hold the guy off, which alerts Kenpachi. So he's on his way, but Gremmy ends up, um, yeah, yeah. So Gremmy ends up getting involved as soon as Kenpachi tries rushing over, and this means that Gremmy, this means that Yachiru is able to completely kill that guy on her own instead of having Gremmy. Yachiru is able to defeat that guy on her own instead of Gremmy just turning its bones into cookies. And Gremmy and Kenpachi have their battle early. Yachiru ends up, she dissipates herself so that she can properly give Kenpachi all the power that he needs. And their battle goes about the same, except he ends up getting folded much quicker. Or maybe it doesn't. But either way, they're able to have their battle, and Kenpachi isn't worried about the fact that Yachiru is missing. He's aware. They ended up having a talk after everything, so yeah, he's gonna be aware of her status as his Sanpakuto spirit. Candice, Giselle, Lutato, and Meninas massacre the 11th Division. So, and incapacitate Kenpachi. Doesn't happen. He unleashes his Bankai, and instead of being saved by Ichigo, he is actually able to murder two of them. We'll say Giselle and Meninas, because I've heard more about Candice and Lototo than I have of the others. Ichigo arrives and helps fold the other two. Yeah, yeah. Ichigo's not at all holding back. He's going straight for the kill, so he kills the other two as well. Candice doesn't. Candice and Giselle aren't around. Basby arrives in absolute anger in his full standig after he sensed what happened. He's probably more pissed that Yuhabak has lost, that his comrades have been killed, and he tries to take on Ichigo by himself. And those other three Stern Ritters also try to get themselves involved for revenge against this lost son of Yuhabak's for killing his own brethren. They're ready to try and take him down again, trying to take Kenpachi and Ichigo down, but they're able to handle that pretty easily. We have Yuha Bak revealing his plan as everyone but Basby gets folded, is beginning to get folded. The Stern Ritter try to prevent Ichigo from leaving, and everyone except and all the other captains, everyone else arrives. All the Soul Reapers end up arriving to hold them all off. The Quincy, in response, all go all out with their whole standig, and here Ichigo he hears of Uryu's betrayal. He's been let in on the plan, so he knows what's going on. But he also knows he's gonna definitely have to act like he's going for the kill, or at the very least, like he's trying to take the battle seriously. He's obviously gonna be able to play the part of a distraught cousin, like, "Why have you done this?" A distraught brother, more like. But he's keeping the girls close to him, specifically in Orihime Tatsuki and Orihime Tatsuki, Yuzu, and Karin. He's keeping them close. Orihime has been mainly healing anybody on their side who's been injured. Rangiku and Toshiro are restored to full strength. Any injuries anyone else may have experienced. Maybe Kenpachi, like the light cuts. And Tatsuki helped out Soifang in her battle. That's what she's been busy with this whole time, so if she wasn't here in canon, she's going to be here now. Yuzu and Karin have been sticking close to Ichigo to watch what happens, but here he actually orders them to stay here while he heads straight for Yuha all on his own. Orihime and Tatsuki kind of just don't want this to happen, but they also understand about the fact that he's just on a different level. But Yuzu and Karin are like vehemently protesting until he tells them that he's ordering them to stay here and he trusts them to be strong enough to survive on the battlefield. What he doesn't trust is the fact that because again they haven't been let in on the fact that Uryu is a double agent. They want to go confront him, so they end up following him like about a minute after Ichigo leaves, and he senses this. Everyone senses this, but they don't have the time. The captains are dealing. The Soul Reapers are dealing with all the Stern Ritter as of right now, and Orihime and Tatsuki end up tagging along. Maybe Renji and Rukia tell him like, go on ahead, follow after those girls, and make sure that they don't get hurt. Otherwise, Ichigo might be the one to kill us all instead of Yuha. So everyone ends up heading out to the Soul Society, and here it's Chad instead of Orihime. It's Chad, the Vizards, the remaining Vizards, and the Arrancar, who arrive in Soul Society. And as this is all happening, Yuha, Hashwalt, and Uryu go for the Soul Game Palace. Renji has his battle with Basby, and he goes straight into Bankai. He knows how powerful full stand it can be, so he goes straight into his Bankai in order to face off against him. And the confrontation at Soul Society goes about the same. Ichigo's gonna probably be arriving a little earlier due to the fact that he's so much faster, but Tatsuki and Orihime are kind of struggling to keep up with Yuzu and Karin. They're not as fast, but we'll say like maybe Tatsuki is carrying Orihime and going as fast as she can with her flame-based Shunpo. She's not in her Shikai or Bankai. She doesn't want to waste that much spiritual pressure, or spiritual energy, but she is doing it to try and keep up with the girls who are going as fast as they can. Ikaku and Yuichika confront Giselle, who... Oh, yeah. Okay. Giselle ends up, instead of just summoning Bambietta, summons all four of those girls, the rest of the female Stern Ritters, to fight against Yumichika and Ikaku. And like I said, Yumichika probably has his own Bankai, which is Keto-based, and Kenpachi was not going to stand for him holding himself back. He just told him to get as strong as he could if he wanted to be a part of the 11th squad. So the two of them are able to hold off those resurrected Stern Ritters. Urahara doesn't have to prepare to send anyone, or maybe he does. He instead prepares to send the girls. Let's say instead of immediately rushing off, he prepares to set off. Chad has decided to go on ahead with them. The Arankars, their fraction, and the Vizards will be enough to help out the Soul Reapers here. So it's gonna be Chad, Orihime, Tatsuki, Yuzu, and Karin who are being prepared by Uruhara to head off. And Yoruichi ends up. Oh, sorry. Yoruichi ends up arriving with all those bottles that she has containing the reishi. And Ikaku and Yumichika are fighting in Bankai to hold off everyone. And because of this, they do end up still end up being incapacitated due to the larger numbers. But of course, this is still interrupted by Mayuri showing up, which Giselle has all of her zombies go to attack Mayuri, who he then displays his ability to nullify all of their Stern Ritter abilities. Giselle tries to summon all those Shinigami zombies, but it goes about the same. He resurrects 4 Arankar, or maybe he resurrects a few extras as well to fight them in response. Maybe like a few lower level Arankars to help out the ones he already has. And as the battle is going on, Giselle reattaches Bambietta's arm, and instead of being confronted by Charlotte, Giselle brings out her trump card, the zombified Hitsugaya. Ooh. I did not know that happened, but like I said, this doesn't happen. Instead, she's forcing all of her zombies to go all out. So we're not gonna have a battle against zombified Hitsugaya. Maybe they are able to be. Maybe her Stone Ritters do end up once again taking control of the flow of the battle, and they end up being the ones to take down Ikaku and Yumichika. It's not easy, but she's able to constantly have them reattach one another, and instead of having the zombified Toshiro, her 4 or 5-ish female Stern Ritters are able to cut down Mayuri a few times, who continues to come back. So here, instead of Mayuri is still able to piece everything together and paralyzes all 4 of the Stern Ritters using his Shikai before injecting them and causing all of them to yeah. And again, there's no resurrection of the rest of the Soul Reapers of Rose, Kensei, and Yurankiku. They're all safe and they're still fighting on the battlefield with everyone else. And that battle is probably going to be coming to a close soon, but they don't need to be exposed to the precognition drug. He instead uses it on the Stern Ritters to force them to turn on Giselle and stab them in the heart. So he ends up using her Stern Ritter friends against her. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Nanana and Robert are taken down by Byakuya much more quickly since Candace isn't here, and he ends up being confronted by Hisagi, who's controlled by Pepe Wakabrata's The Love, as well as taking control of. There's no fighting of Minanis and Litoto. Instead, she tries turning the Shinigami against one another since there's so many of them here. She tries turning the Shinigami Vizards and the Arankar against one another. However, they're able to take down their much weaker comrades. And they're able to get them out of the way before Byakuya goes against Pipi himself. When Byakuya ends up proving himself resistant to the effects, instead of preparing to immediately kill him, he's taken down before he can even enter his Volstandig by Kensei and Rose, who, like I said, they're all on the battlefield. So these people are getting taken down much more easily. They're moving along much more quickly, and Hisagi is ended up being incapacitated, and Mayuri arrives out of nowhere to everyone else on the battlefield. They had no idea he was here. Mayuri ends up using the Stern Raiders. He brings in the Stern Raiders instead, all of his zombified Stern Raiders that he's taking control of, and instead has them be the one to kill Pepe instead. Yeah, and Mayuri does still have him die the same way to Lil Toto, who ends up devouring him. And then we go to The Soul King Palace. Kirinji finds himself unable to directly attack Yuha, who is then confronted by Senjumaru and her divine soldiers. And when everyone else is, yeah, so they're unable to attack him, and then Nyanzo Weisel reveals himself. Then we have everyone arriving. Ichigo arrives first. He arrives around this point in time, and yeah, Ganju. Maybe he ended up meeting Ganju a bit earlier. He's been stuck at this aerial passageway, and Ganju reveals the map that he has to take, which he takes a quick glance at before having his Zanpakuto spirits memorize it to guide him, and then he takes off. And then maybe like a few minutes later, everyone else catches up. Chad or Hime, all of them. They all catch up, and they end up following the aerial path. After learning of his ability, Senjumaru distracts him with a surprise attack from the divine soldiers, while she resources his. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Senjumaru is able to impale him and ends up killing him. Yuha has his Soldat face off against the divine soldiers and his Schutzstaffel to fight the royal guard. After Gerald Valkyrie overwhelms Senjumaru and Pernita, whatever, they end up destroying a larger divine soldier, and Lil Baro seemingly kills her and destroys the surrounding city. Of course, this is a complete ruse on Senjumaru's part, with the real palace being hidden by Ichibe, as the Quincy are trapped in a cage of life by Hikifune and confronted by Nemaya. Make short work of it. Okay, all of this is basically going about the same. There's no real change with the Zero Squad, so let me go on ahead and skip ahead. Yeah. Uses the stolen power of the Stern Ritter below to revive his Schutzstaffel. And this has a bit of a consequence of depowering, of severely depowering the zombified Stern Ritter. Maybe it doesn't, since they kind of already, maybe Mayuri wasn't able to get them to pull out the power of their Stern Ritters, of the power they were given. But now they're basically basic holified Quincy. Maybe they're a bit more skilled, but they're basically basic ass Quincy zombies. And yeah, this all goes about the same. Yuha takes down the majority of the Zero Squad before, yeah, the part of the Cage of Life is destroyed so that Yuha can confront Ichibe. Shinsui is moving through the ruins of Wonderike City with Yamamoto to meet with Ukitake, who has begun the Kamikake, before they all leave to meet with Central 46. Although Yamamoto decides to depart and goes to the Soul King Palace himself so that he can assist Ichibe against Yuha. Ichibe begins his fight, and this is about going about the same. Yeah. And instead of meeting up with Urahara, let's say that the Fullbringers are the ones to meet up with Urahara instead of the Vizards, and they're the ones who and Urahara still has Yushiro, Yoroichi's younger brother, bring those items to him that he's gonna need. Ichigo, their fight gets more serious between Ichibe and Yuha, and Yamamoto ends up showing up, and he's stuck in Shikai because he doesn't want to give up his Bankai once again. But the both of them end up having to really try hard, and he has to hold back a little bit though. He doesn't want his flames to remove all the black and shadows for Ichibe to use. Yeah, they're able to get to the similar stage of their battle, and this is where things are going to change, since Ichigo ends up arriving in the midst of this three-way battle before it can end, and they all start going all out. Ichibe and Yamamoto tell him to go all out, and Ichigo is completely prepared to. He removes all the clothing that he was given. He ends up taking a deep breath, he calms himself, and he brings out the full power of his abilities. Yuha is worried and tries to rush past everyone. He can only see one future where he can survive this, and it's where he immediately bypasses everyone to get to the Soul King. Yamamoto and Ichibe are trying to hold him off, but he ends up killing Ichibe in the process because he's not able to completely focus on overpowering him. He's just focusing on stalling Yuha. So he ends up getting killed, and Yamamoto is grievously injured. He's practically completely run through and pinned to a wall, similar to how his lieutenant was. And by this point, Ichigo has completely unleashed the power of his Bankai. He rushes to meet Yuha and prevents him from piercing the Soul King, and they end up having their confrontation right in his throne room. So we're not gonna have to worry about that. Ichibe ends up resurrecting himself and removes the blade that is pinning Yamamoto, and the two of them, maybe he uses some healing Kiro to help stabilize him, and they move to witness the battle between Ichigo and Yuha as everyone else arrives, as Chad, Orihime, Yuzu, and Karin and Tatsuki arrive, feeling the massive spiritual pressures battling against each other. It feels like a battle between gods. So, yeah, I know that felt like a lot of reading off of the wiki, and it basically was. I'm still not good at this. I'm still only beginning, but that'll be it for this part. Ichigo, um, the Soul Reapers and Soul Society. They're having a much more decisive victory. They were able to take care of most of the Stern Ritters, so they're not going to be a problem moving forward. Um, Everyone is basically in stable condition. No loss of life in like Hitsugaya, in Rangiku, in any of them. They're all good. No loss of Kensei or those zombified Soul Reapers. Uh, and Ichigo is facing off against Yuha directly in front of the Soul King in his full Bankai, which, as I mentioned before, is his canon Bankai, but with two horns, the complete hollow markings, blood vein and blood artery pulsing, and Volstandic wings. And the wings are black and purple. We'll just say that those veins have merged, so they're, instead of having red and blue veins and arteries, they're all of them. All the markings are purple, constantly increasing his strength and defense at the same time. And he is ready to face down against his so-called father, the father of all Quincy's. So yeah, that's where I'm gonna end it here. The rest of the group has arrived, and Chad, Orihime, Tatsuki, Yuzu, and Karin. And they're ready to meet up with Ichigo and assist in any way they can in this battle. They may not be able to, but we'll see. So that'll be the end of this part, and I will see all of you in the next video. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want. Leave me any criticisms you may have so that I can improve. And if you want to be a dick, just go on ahead and go watch something else. Bye bye.